Day 53. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. This week, FBI agents returned to the quiet, sun-bleached streets of Catalina Foothills outside Tucson, Arizona. But they were not searching the brush. They were not following a new tip about a vehicle or a sighting. They were knocking on doors, and they were asking questions that no one in that neighborhood had ever been asked before. Questions about a vacant house. A house that emptied out quietly, without explanation, in the weeks before Nancy vanished. And questions about names. Specific names. The name of every single contractor, every construction worker, every laborer who had been operating anywhere near Nancy Guthrie's home in the days and weeks leading up to the night she disappeared. For 8 weeks, this case has lived inside a single frame. One image. That grainy, haunting doorbell camera still of a masked man standing on an elderly woman's porch in the dead of night. That is what the world has seen. That is what the world has been shown. But the questions the FBI is asking now tell a very different story, because they suggest that a single frame is far too small for what actually happened here. This is no longer a story about one masked figure on one night. The investigation has shifted. The evidence has begun to outline something far more deliberate, far more organized, and far more disturbing than anything a single doorbell camera could capture. Something that may not have started on January 31st at all, but weeks earlier, with a visit no one noticed and a pattern no one recognized until it was far too late. At the center of everything is a gap. 41 minutes. That is the window between the moment Nancy's doorbell camera went dark and the moment her pacemaker stopped sending signals to her phone. And within those 41 minutes, there is a narrower window still, just 14 minutes, that the FBI believes may hold the key to understanding everything. How many people were involved? How they moved through that house? And how they took an 84-year-old woman who could barely walk 50 yards on her own without leaving a single witness behind. That is what this video is about. Not just what happened to Nancy Guthrie on one night. But what those 14 minutes reveal about the people who planned this, and the weeks of preparation that may have preceded it. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now and tell us where in the world you are watching from. Seriously. We genuinely love to see how far Cold Case Unearthed reaches. Whether you are in Lagos or London, New York or Nairobi, Cape Town or California, let us know. Every time this case reaches a new corner of the world, that is one more set of eyes that might recognize something. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. Because when this case breaks, and it will break, you are going to want to hear it here first. If you have been following this case, you already know the basic outline. But before we go deeper into what the new evidence reveals, we need to understand the night itself, because every new lead, every new question the FBI is asking, circles back to those dark hours between January 31st and February 1st, 2026. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, the co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, one of the most recognized faces in American morning television. Nancy has lived in her home in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood outside Tucson, Arizona for decades. It is the kind of neighborhood where people leave their doors open during the day, where the streets are lined with desert brush and the houses are spread apart, and where nothing bad is supposed to happen. She lives alone. She has limited mobility. She relies on daily medication to manage her health, medication that must be taken every single day without exception. And she wears a pacemaker that syncs data continuously to her iPhone, monitoring her heart rhythm and transmitting that data wirelessly to her phone in real time. January 31st, 2026. 9:30 p.m. Earlier that evening Nancy's family had dropped her off at home after dinner together. It was approximately 9:30 p.m. They watched her go inside. They drove away. That was the last time anyone who loves Nancy Guthrie saw her face. The following morning was a Sunday. Nancy did not appear for her regular virtual church service, something she attended consistently, without exception. A friend noticed the absence and reached out to the family. By noon, Nancy's children were at her home. What they found when they arrived stopped them cold. Her phone was sitting right where she had left it. Her wallet was there. Her medication, the medication she cannot go a single day without, was sitting exactly where she had placed it the night before, untouched. Every item that a person would take if they were leaving voluntarily was still in that house. Nancy was not. At 12:15. Pima County Sheriff's deputies arrived that afternoon. What they encountered inside immediately elevated this from a wellness check to something far more serious. There was blood. Drops of it on the front porch. Traces of it inside the home. Sheriff Chris Nanos addressed the public directly and without ambiguity. He believed Nancy Guthrie had been taken against her will, in the middle of the night, and that she did not leave that house on her own terms. The FBI joined the investigation within days of her disappearance. On February 10, investigators released the footage that has since become the face of this case. Doorbell camera video showing a masked individual standing on Nancy's front porch in the darkness of early morning. A man wearing a ski mask, gloves, a holstered handgun visible at his side, a 25-liter Ozark Trail backpack on his back. He was captured on camera deliberately covering the lens with vegetation, not accidentally walking past it, not unaware of it, but intentionally neutralizing it. The FBI described him as approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall, average build. His identity remains unknown. In the days that followed, multiple alleged ransom notes began arriving at news outlets. TMZ received one. 2 Tucson television stations received copies. The notes demanded millions of dollars in Bitcoin, included a real Bitcoin wallet address, and set 2 deadlines, February 5 and February 9, with escalating threats for non-compliance attached to each one. None of the notes have been verified as authentic. No proof of life was ever provided, despite the Guthrie family making explicit, public, emotional pleas for exactly that. The family has been fully cleared of any suspicion. A reward totaling more than $1 million has been posted, payable in cash, to protect the anonymity of anyone who comes forward. The FBI has contributed. Local Crime Stoppers have contributed. The family themselves have contributed. 8 weeks later, there was no arrest. There is no publicly named suspect. And Nancy Guthrie has not been found. That is what every news outlet has reported. That is what the world knows. But beneath that surface, there is a forensic timeline that the FBI has been quietly, methodically pulling apart, layer by layer. And it begins at exactly 1:47 in the morning. The Nest doorbell camera mounted at Nancy Guthrie's front door stopped transmitting. Not because of a glitch. Not because of a power surge. The footage the FBI later recovered makes that absolutely clear. A gloved hand reaches toward the lens. In one clip, the masked figure is visible holding a flashlight clenched between his teeth, both hands occupied, one pressing vegetation over the camera to block its view entirely. The motion is deliberate. Practiced. It does not belong to someone improvising. He knew the camera was there. He knew exactly where it was mounted. He knew how to reach it. And he had already decided, before he ever set foot on that porch, that he was going to neutralize it. For the next 25 minutes, nothing. No footage. No motion alerts. No digital trace of anything happening inside or outside that house. Whatever occurred during those 25 minutes left no electronic record that investigators have made public. 25 minutes of silence. At 2:12 a.m. The home surveillance software registered the motion. Not video, the system did not capture a recording. Only a trigger. An automated alert indicating that something had moved within range of one of the cameras pointed at the exterior of the property. A person. Or an animal. A coyote moving through the Arizona darkness. A javelina crossing the yard. Sheriff Nanos later acknowledged publicly that there is no way to confirm which. The system logged a trigger. Nothing more. And that ambiguity, that single unanswerable question, matters enormously. Because of what happened 16 minutes later. At exactly 2:28 a.m. Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker recorded its final sync with her iPhone. The device that had been monitoring her heart rhythm around the clock, transmitting data wirelessly to the phone resting somewhere inside her home, went silent. It did not reconnect. Not a minute later. Not at 3 o'clock. Not at any point afterward. The phone was later found exactly where she had left it. Nancy was not. 41 minutes from the first event to the last. That is the digital skeleton of the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared. And within those 41 minutes, there is a window that the FBI has been quietly, intensely focused on. 14 minutes. The gap between 2:12 and 2:28. Between the motion trigger and the pacemaker's last signal. 14 minutes. Think carefully about what that means. If the motion at 2:12 was the suspect leaving, walking away from the house, moving through the yard, exiting the property, then Nancy's pacemaker kept communicating with her phone for another 14 full minutes after he was already gone. 14 minutes with no captor in the house. Was she conscious? Did she try to reach a phone? Did she call out? Was she already too incapacitated to move? Or did someone come back? But there is a second interpretation. One that is far more disturbing. If the motion at 2:12 was not the suspect leaving, but someone else arriving, a second individual approaching from outside while the first was still inside with Nancy, then those 14 minutes do not represent Nancy alone at all. They represent the final phase of a coordinated extraction. Two people. Two roles. A synchronized operation completing itself in the Arizona dark. Former homicide detective Ted Williams reviewed this timeline publicly and was unambiguous. 41 minutes inside a victim's home is deeply unusual. Most intruders want out. Exposure is their enemy. Every additional minute is another minute something goes wrong. 41 minutes is not the behavior of someone afraid of being caught. It is the behavior of someone who knows, with certainty, that they will not be. They had time. They knew they had time. And they used every minute of it. Then, 8 minutes after the pacemaker went silent, at approximately 2:36 a.m., a Ring doorbell camera 2.5 miles away captured a vehicle moving through the area. Fox News obtained and published the footage. Investigators have not confirmed whether the vehicle is connected. But the math is not easy to dismiss. 8 minutes is enough time to carry an 84-year-old woman to a vehicle, pull off a quiet residential street, and put 2.5 miles between yourself and her front door. The FBI also recovered additional images from motion-activated cameras positioned around Nancy's pool, backyard, and side yard, thumbnail stills captured in the days and weeks before the night of the abduction. According to sources who spoke with ABC News, nothing suspicious was recorded on the night Nancy disappeared. But investigators identified several unidentified individuals moving through her back and side yards during the period leading up to it. Who they were. Why they were there. Whether they had any legitimate reason to be near the home of a woman living alone. None of that has ever been publicly explained. The digital timeline tells one story. But there is a physical detail at Nancy Guthrie's house, something visible from the street, something any visitor would have seen immediately, that cracks the single suspect theory open at its foundation. Nancy Guthrie's front door has a security gate. Not a screen door. Not decorative iron. A heavy metal security gate, the kind built throughout the American Southwest specifically to prevent forced entry. These are not decorative. They are barriers. They are built to hold. Her neighbor Laura, who has a nearly identical gate, spoke directly to NewsNation correspondent Brian Enton. If that gate was locked on the night of January 31st, she explained, and there is no evidence it was forced, no evidence it was damaged or breached in any way, then the masked man on the doorbell camera could not have entered through the front door. Laura was unequivocal. You are not getting through that gate from the outside. Not without leaving visible evidence. Not without marks. Not without damage that investigators would have found immediately. So the question becomes something much harder. If he could not get in through the front, how did Nancy get out through it? Laura watches the doorbell footage closely. The masked figure is not testing the gate. He is not pulling at it. He is standing beside it, looking through it, waiting. Waiting for something. Or someone. I think he was standing there waiting for someone to come out, she told Enton. One or more individuals had already entered through another access point, a back door, a window, some secondary entry the front gate does not protect, while the man on camera waited at the front for them to bring Nancy to him. Pima County Sheriff's Department has acknowledged they are not ruling out multiple perpetrators. Retired combat veteran and security consultant Kurt Dabb told reporters he believes as many as 2 to 4 individuals may have been involved, based purely on the logistics. Disabling the doorbell camera. Entering a secured home without triggering a response. Locating an elderly woman in the dark. Managing her. Moving her. Carrying her, potentially, given her limited mobility. Loading her into a vehicle. Doing all of it inside 41 minutes, on a quiet residential street, without a single neighbor waking up. That is too much for one person to manage alone. And then there is the vacant house. Retired Pima County SWAT Commander Bob Krieger told Parade magazine that FBI agents are actively investigating a nearby property that was vacated shortly before Nancy's disappearance, a location that could have functioned as a staging point. A base embedded in the neighborhood itself. Somewhere a person could spend days watching Nancy's home without anyone questioning why they were there. From a house like that, someone could have tracked everything. When her lights went on and off. When her family visited. Which neighbors were home. Which were regularly away. Every delivery. Every car that pulled in. Every routine she had followed for years without variation, because she had no reason to think anyone was watching. And here is what made that surveillance invisible: construction was active on those streets. Workers came and went. Unfamiliar vehicles and unfamiliar faces were part of the daily scenery. Someone watching Nancy's home could not have asked for better cover. You become invisible in plain sight. Nobody asks what you are doing. Nobody wonders why you keep coming back. The FBI's canvas reflects exactly this. According to NewsNation's Brian Entin, agents did not ask residents for general descriptions of anyone suspicious. They asked for specific names. The name of every contractor, every construction worker, every laborer active on nearby projects in the weeks before February 1st. That is not a wide net. That is a tightening one. We're going to pause for just a second right here. What time is it where you are watching this? Seriously, drop it in the comments. Whether it's 2 in the morning and you cannot sleep, your lunch break, early morning coffee, or late at night after the kids are in bed, we want to know. We read every single comment on this channel. Now let's keep going, because this is where this case goes somewhere most people haven't seen yet. For nearly 7 full weeks, the public timeline of this case began on January 31st. That was the night. That was the date on every headline, every news segment, every social media post. January 31st was where the story started. Until March 21st, when the Guthrie family released a statement that quietly, without fanfare, moved that starting point back by 3 weeks. Nancy's children urged the Tucson community to search their memories, their camera footage, their Ring notifications, their recollections of anything unusual, across 3 specific windows of time. January 31st. The early morning hours of February 1st. And the late evening of January 11th. That last date landed differently. January 11th had never been mentioned. Not by investigators. Not by the family. Not by any outlet covering the case. For nearly 7 weeks, it had existed nowhere in the public narrative. And then, without explanation, Nancy's own children were asking the community to look back at it. What happened on January 11th? Sheriff Nanos confirmed the date 2 days later. We do believe that something occurred on January 11th, he said. The conclusion came from the FBI's analysis of digital equipment and data recovered from the home. He would not say what. He offered only this: the date matters. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffer was more direct. The language points to a trial run, she wrote publicly. A reconnaissance visit. The masked figure returning to Nancy's property weeks before the abduction, testing the approach, studying the camera placement, learning the blind spots, and walking away without anyone noticing. That interpretation gained weight almost immediately when Fox News reported, citing a source familiar with the investigation, that 2 of the doorbell camera images released to the public were captured on different days. Not both from January 31st. 2 separate nights. Which means the masked figure was photographed at Nancy Guthrie's front door more than once. And then there is the neighbor's dog. He spoke publicly. He said that on the night of January 11th, his dogs woke him from sleep with sustained, agitated barking, the kind that does not come from a passing car or a rustling bush. The kind that means something unfamiliar is close. Something that does not belong. He said he had never heard that kind of barking before those 2 nights. He has not heard it since. 2 nights. January 11th, January 31st. The same dogs. The same alarm. 20 days apart. The FBI has also been asking residents specifically about January 24th, a third date, added to the investigative focus without any public explanation. If the pattern means what it appears to mean, the sequence looks like this. January 11th, someone arrives in the dark. The dogs know something is wrong. Nobody else does. January 24th. A second pass. A refinement. Confirmation that conditions haven't changed. January 31st, just before 2 a.m. Someone returns. This time, they are not leaving without her. January 11th was not the crime. It was the preparation. Someone at that property, learning the layout, confirming the camera positions, measuring how long it would take for anyone to notice unusual activity on that quiet street, and discovering that the answer was, no one noticed at all. That is an extraordinary piece of intelligence for someone planning what came next. And they used it. Within days of Nancy's disappearance, a second thread emerged, one that runs in a very different direction and has refused to be reconciled with the reconnaissance theory ever since. The ransom notes. The first alleged note arrived at TMZ and two Tucson television stations on February 1st and 2nd, barely hours after Nancy was reported missing. It demanded millions of dollars in Bitcoin. It included a real, verifiable Bitcoin wallet address. It set two hard deadlines, 5 p.m. on February 5th and February 9th, with escalating consequences for each one that passed without payment. What made investigators take it seriously was not the demand. It was what the note knew. The first ransom note contained specific details about Nancy Guthrie's Apple Watch and a floodlight at her home. Details that had not been released to the public. Details that, at the moment that note arrived, only someone with direct knowledge of the crime scene could have known. Savannah Guthrie and her siblings responded publicly and emotionally. "We beg you now to return our mother to us. This is very valuable to us and we will pay." February 5th came. The deadline passed. Nothing. February 9th came. The deadline passed again. No follow-through. No proof of life. No direct contact with the family, ever. Every communication went to media outlets. Never to the people being asked to pay. Additional messages arrived at TMZ in the days that followed. One claimed to be not from the kidnapper but from someone who knew the kidnapper's identity, and demanded 1 Bitcoin, approximately $65,000, in exchange for a name. The FBI deposited nothing. Journalists who reviewed the full correspondence noted that the writing style across all messages sounded strikingly consistent, as though produced by a single author. The language suggested familiarity with the Tucson area. But a retired FBI agent flagged one detail, the use of the term USD rather than simply dollars. An American writer, he noted, would be unlikely to phrase it that way, suggesting either a non-American author, a deliberate attempt to create that impression, or a fabrication entirely. Two threads. Pulling in opposite directions. A multi-week surveillance operation speaks to someone methodical, patient, embedded in the neighborhood. Ransom notes sent to tabloid media with shifting demands and no follow-through speaks to something far less organized, possibly fraudulent, possibly disconnected from the crime entirely. Construction workers and vacant houses point one direction. Bitcoin wallets and letters to TMZ point another. Each piece illuminates something. Together, as of this recording, they do not form one picture. They form two. And the FBI has not publicly told us which one they believe. The clearest path to resolving that contradiction sits inside a laboratory somewhere outside Arizona. DNA. Recovered from Nancy Guthrie's home. Genetic material that did not belong to her and did not match anyone with legitimate contact. Sheriff Nanos described it as mixed, genetic material from more than one individual, intertwined in a way that makes isolation significantly more difficult than a clean single-source sample. "We have some DNA that we think is still workable," he told reporters. "And we have labs around this country working diligently to get there." Investigators intend to use investigative genetic genealogy, the same technique that broke the Golden State Killer case after decades of dead ends. It is a painstaking process. Partial genetic markers matched against genealogical databases. Family trees built outward until the trail narrows to a name. It takes time. Sometimes weeks. Sometimes months. And with mixed samples, there are no guarantees. While the DNA sat in a lab, other leads emerged and collapsed. 16 pairs of gloves collected from the surrounding area. One pair, black gloves found along a roadside approximately 2 miles from the house, appeared to match what the suspect wore in the doorbell footage. Sent to a lab. Entered into the FBI's national database. Traced eventually to a local restaurant worker with no connection to this investigation whatsoever. 16 gloves. The most promising lead went nowhere. A man named Carlos Palazuelo was detained during a traffic stop in Rio Rico, 60 miles south of Tucson, near the Mexican border, on the same day the FBI released the suspect images. His home was searched. Hours later, he was released without charges. He told reporters he had never heard of Nancy Guthrie. Mexican authorities in the state of Sonora later confirmed the FBI had communicated there were no active leads suggesting Nancy had crossed the border. No arrest. No named suspect. No charges filed. And yet former FBI agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffer has maintained publicly that the investigation is anything but stagnant. She has described investigators as drinking from a fire hose, overwhelmed not with silence, but with volume. More leads than most missing person cases ever produce. If that is accurate, the silence from law enforcement is strategic, not a reflection of a case gone cold. Coffin Daffer has also questioned what she called the cloak and dagger approach, writing publicly that if investigators genuinely want the public's help, the level of secrecy does not serve that goal. Sheriff Nanos has said he believes investigators know why Nancy's home was specifically targeted. That this was not random. That it was directed at her personally. But he will not say why. And in almost the same breath, he warns the broader Tucson community, do not think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, you are safe. He is simultaneously saying the crime was targeted and the public should be vigilant. Saying investigators know the motive while refusing to share it. Asking the community to come forward while keeping findings locked away. The frustration has reached a point where Nanos now faces a recall effort from residents of his own county. And then there is this, which has received far less attention than it deserves. The last known video of Nancy Guthrie alive, footage captured from inside an Uber, showing her before the abduction, was not obtained by the FBI until 47 days after she disappeared. Nearly 7 weeks. Before investigators acquired what may be the final moving image of an 84-year-old woman before she was taken. No explanation has ever been offered for why it took that long. Every piece of evidence in this case, taken alone, can be explained away. The motion trigger at 2:12 might have been an animal. The vacant house might be coincidental. The ransom notes might be a hoax. The doorbell footage might show only one person because there was only one person. January 11th might carry less meaning than the family statement implied. But lay them side by side. Trace the connections. And a pattern emerges that is very difficult to explain as coincidence. January 11th, late at night, a neighbor's dogs bark with the sustained, alarmed response that means something threatening is close. The FBI's forensic analysis of digital equipment confirms something occurred that night. The doorbell camera images released to the public came from more than one date. The masked figure was there before January 31st. That visit was not the crime. It was reconnaissance. Testing the approach. Identifying the blind spots. Learning that on this quiet street, in this quiet neighborhood, no one notices anything at all. January 24th, a second pass. A refinement. Confirmation that nothing has changed and the window remains open. Then January 31st. Just before 2 o'clock in the morning. A return. This time with purpose. This time without intention of leaving empty-handed. The camera goes dark. 25 minutes of silence. Something moves. 14 minutes. And at 2:28 a.m., the pacemaker goes silent. For the last time. 8 minutes later, a vehicle 2.5 miles away. The security gate shows no signs of forced entry. The man on the porch was not trying to get in. He was waiting for someone to come out. Someone already inside. Someone who had found another way in, or had been given one. 41 minutes of comfort. Of certainty. Of knowing the layout, the security system, the response time of every patrol car on those streets. That is not instinct. That is not adrenaline. That is preparation. Connect it all to the question that has hovered over this case from the beginning: who does this for an 84-year-old woman living alone? The evidence does not outline a random predator. It does not outline a burglar who stumbled into something unplanned. It outlines a group of people who identified Nancy Guthrie as a specific target, surveilled her home for weeks, established legitimate-seeming cover in her neighborhood, entered through a secondary access point, and extracted her within a carefully timed window while a second operative waited at the front. If that reconstruction is accurate, or even partially accurate, then this was not an event. This was a campaign. As of today, the investigation is in its 8th week. No identified suspect. No confirmed motive. No arrest. And Nancy has not been found. The FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department continue to operate a joint command center, working under the presumption that Nancy is still alive. But the practical reality of her survival grows harder to reconcile with each day that passes. She is 84 years old. She depends on daily medication that was left sitting in her home. Her pacemaker has not transmitted a signal in 53 days. Her family's language has shifted in ways that are quiet but unmistakable. In their most recent statement, Nancy's children wrote that they want to celebrate her beautiful and courageous life, but cannot do so until she is brought to a final place of rest. Those are not the words of a family that has not begun to grieve. Savannah Guthrie returned to Studio 1A in New York on March 5, her first time back since her mother disappeared. She told her colleagues she intends to return to the show. But she admitted she does not know how. "I don't know how to come back," she said. "But I don't know how not to." The reward stands at over $1 million, payable in cash, specifically structured to protect the anonymity of anyone who comes forward. That detail matters. It signals that the Guthrie family believes the person holding the critical piece of information may be afraid. Afraid of being identified. Afraid of retaliation. Afraid of what coming forward could cost them. Behind the scenes, the investigation is reportedly anything but cold. The DNA, though mixed and complex, is workable. The laboratories are applying the same genealogical methods that cracked cases once considered unsolvable. Those results could arrive in weeks. They could arrive in months. But when they do, they will either confirm or dismantle the theory that someone whose genetic material has no business being in Nancy Guthrie's home, was inside it in the early hours of February 1. There are still pieces missing. The full significance of January 24. The content of the Uber video. The motive that Sheriff Nanos says investigators have identified but refused to share. And the identity of the figure standing on that porch, the person the internet calls Porch Guy, a silhouette in a ski mask that the combined investigative resources of Pima County and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have not yet been able to fill with a name. Nancy Guthrie is out there somewhere. Or the answer to what happened to her is out there somewhere, held by someone in the Tucson community who may not yet understand the weight of what they know. A vehicle parked where it had no reason to be. A face near that vacant house. A conversation overheard at a job site. A detail that seemed like nothing in the moment and only now, with everything else laid beside it, has started to feel like something. The FBI believes that person exists. The family believes that person exists. The question is whether they have recognized yet what they are holding. If you are in the Tucson area, or if you know anyone who is, please share this video. Not for the views. Because Sheriff Nanos has said it plainly, someone in that community knows something. And that something could bring Nancy Guthrie home. You can contact the FBI anonymously. The number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The reward is over $1 million, payable in cash. Day 53. Nancy Guthrie has not been found. The cameras may be gone. But the FBI is still in that neighborhood. And so is the question that sits at the center of everything. 1:47 a.m., the camera goes dark. 41 minutes. 14 of them are still unexplained. 2:28 a.m., the pacemaker goes silent. Who was already inside her home? Last thing before you go, what are you watching Cold Case Unearthed on right now? Mobile phone, tablet, PC, or TV? Drop it in the comments below, we genuinely want to know. And if this case kept you locked in from the first second, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it puts this case in front of thousands more eyes. More eyes means more people who might recognize something. And subscribe, because when the DNA results come back, when the FBI makes a move, when an arrest happens, you will hear it here first. Cold Case Unearthed. We dig until there is nothing left to find.